Actually, yes, you can also, in keeping with Wendell's talk, you can follow him on Twitter and find out exactly. This is welcome to another really wonderful session that we're excited about at the Awards and the Tree Festival. As you know, we've been having a series of conversations under the rubric of journeys. We've had literary journeys, artistic journeys, culinary journeys, and in this case we have one that we're really excited about, which is artistic journeys with someone who's had one of the most remarkable, I think, artistic journeys in Goa in recent years, because it is so multifaceted and always with the highest excellence in mind. This year, this is my one opportunity to say so. We're extremely proud of Wendell, because Wendell, besides his normal career highlights, which each year get better, he's been recognized both by the Indian government and the French government in an extraordinary way. Congratulations, Wendell, we are really proud. Just for a second, I know Wendell doesn't need any introduction, but in this instance, with Dr. Vidya Dehejia here, I would just like to welcome Dr. Vidya Dehejia for doing this, and thank you, Wendell, for bringing her on board. She had a sensational session today with Dr. Rajmohan Gandhi and T.M. Krishna, and that's partly due to your intervention. I really appreciate it. Dr. Dehejia is one of India's leading intellectuals and intellectual treasure. She's a classicist, and in this instance, she's going to be talking to Wendell about his artistic journey. Welcome.
I think we're going to be in for a real treat, an opportunity to ask Wendell, you as well as the audience, questions which you probably have never dared to ask before, right? Wendell, you are referred to often as the guru of minimalism. And I was fortunate enough to see his very last show, this year's show, all white, called Yoga Calm. It was understated elegance, but I can't quite describe the effect that it had. It was completely wonderful. In that context, I wonder whether I can ask you to make a comment on Diana Vreeland, you know, this exuberant editor of Vogue, ex-editor of Vogue, and her famous sayings, so different from what you do, where she said, "Pink is the navy blue of India," that famous quote. And then the other one which says, "Exaggeration is the only reality I know." Totally different. Would you like to just make a comment on that, and how you feel about it?
I completely agree with Diana Vreeland, for the simple reason is that when we talk about exaggeration, we tend to think of it as a superlative high. And I think I took minimalism to its superlative high with Yoga Calm. I just feel that, you know, the more I take away and the more I can give the essence of what I'm trying to say, it is a superlative in its own way. And it is an exaggeration in its own way.
That's a very nice way of putting it. I hadn't quite thought of it in those terms, but you're right. And in his book, which we might be talking about a little later, in Moda Goa, you say, and I'll quote you, "In the sea of Indian color and embroidery, I gave my country an aesthetic in clothing based on minimalism, yoga, Ayurveda, temples, spiritual calm, resort wear ease, all inspired by Goa. Nothing was planned, everything evolved." Tell us a little bit more about how Goa is your inspiration. What are the things that you are pulling from it so effectively?
So many things. I think Goa for me is the mother of inspirations, because when I said I was going to live in Goa, you know, I came with parents who said, when we retire, we go and live in Goa. And I just didn't want that to happen. I wanted it to happen when I was in the prime of my menu, so to say. But I said I'm going to go to Goa when I really feel that I can explore the possibilities that Goa can give a creative mind. Everybody in Bombay says this is commercial and professional suicide, because you're going to leave a big city like Bombay where fashion is supposed to be, and then go and live in a small village, and you'll possibly be forgotten. Quite the reverse happened. My work evolved, Goa evolved, and I think what happened was everything I saw I could translate. If you can have the first slide on, like for example, this ripple of water of a boatman in a river in Goa, which all of us see, and it doesn't hit anyone that we can use it as a translation into fashion. And we took this fabric and we pleated it, and then finally we made it into the next slide. So this is my good friend who's now an actress, Lisa Hayden. We actually made a circular. This was difficult to do, you know, take an Indian shape like a circle, use Indian geometry, but it actually is just one big circle with two holes for the armhole and a belt tied around it. And somebody in Switzerland actually saw it, and it went international. It was on Charlize Theron for the next ad, which I think is, next slide please, Raymond White. So I mean, this is something that I feel I owe only to Goa. I mean, if I wasn't sitting by that river and if I wasn't looking at something with my creative eye, I don't think this would have got to, you know, billboards in New York, 20 stories high in Times Square. I just felt that, I always felt that I did not want to be the best on my street, the best in my school, the best in my college, or the best in my state or country. When I studied in Paris, they always said, be the best from an internationally new perspective. And I think that can make me stand alongside Karl Lagerfeld and say, I like what you do, but I think I do my stuff as well.
What happened? You had your first international debut in Düsseldorf, in Germany. How did that one come about? Was it after this ad?
It completely shocked me because, I mean, the international perception of clothing had three aesthetics, or two aesthetics rather. One was this thing epicenter in Rajasthan where it was all royal jewels and highly brocaded clothes. The other was this hippie kitsch, Bollywood kind of, you know, pop art stuff. The third that was lying dormant was actually the India of South India, which foreigners and Indians were attracted to. You know, yoga, Ayurveda, all these, the Gandhian principles, and keeping it so minimal was never expressed, neither in interior decoration or as a fashion aesthetic. And I took, if I can have the next slide, I took the abstraction of these, all I had was this. I mean, I just had the sea, I had the sand, and I had this abstract sense of Susegad, and I had to translate it. But when I did translate it and it got effectively accepted in India, lo and behold, from all the designers that Germany could pick for the world's largest garment fair, they came and knocked on my door in Koival, and it completely shocked me because then suddenly I knew, next slide please, I knew that I was going to be in the international space. Can we have the next slide please? I mean, there's nobody to ask. This is very scary. There was no one before me that I could ask another designer like Tarun or like, you know, what happens? Can you tell me more? I mean, they were asking for a show in October, clothes in as early as March or June, and they said we need it because we need to do this in our way, and this was not the Indian way. We normally shot our clothes a month before and put it out in our press note. And then when I finally arrived in Egedo, it all hit me because here was the world's best supermodel at that time, Helena Christensen, half Peruvian, half I think Danish, and shot by the world's great Mario Testino, who was shooting at that time Princess Diana for covers of Vogue. And when I landed there, I said, oh my God, like this is really something that's happening. I didn't know it until I came back to India and realized what a big noise they made about it. But I am thankful to my French teacher in Paris who told me, try to be internationally new and the world will look at you.
I know that in your home in Koival, you both cook and you garden. Can you tell us if gardening in any way played into your designing?
I'm a Sunday gardener, and if I don't put my hand in my garden, it's going to be a complete mess because we have gardeners that are just waterers and they just water the garden. But before I get to that, I'm going to go to the next slide, which is we spoke about having this and these oyster shells. For my first show in Goa, we actually roamed the length and breadth of the country with this as inspiration of the state, sorry, to do something out of a mussel shell. And what we did was the next slide, which is Madhu Sapre. We had to actually get two big muscles, the largest we could find, to cover her breast and stick them together. And I remember the Chief Minister, Mr. Rani, for the show at that time. We had these, the muscle shell bra was actually kind of tied together with nylon fishing line, which I found in the bazaar in Mapsa. And when the first garment came out and Malaika Arora opened this organza cocoon and came out, it looked like it was just stuck on her. But that's where we started from. And going back to your question about gardening, next slide please. So this is what I have. This is something called the Japanese lantern hibiscus in colloquial terms. And I wanted to translate it into something bigger in fashion. So in fashion, we either minimalize, maximize, or throw everything out of gear. And in the next slide, we actually got this tie-dyed in Sri Lanka. So you have some eye candy for the ladies here. This is Asif. And we actually blew the hibiscus as large as that and made these 5 big sarongs. I'll give you all numbers later, okay, if you want these guys. Next slide, please. And then, these, I don't know what you call these small flowers. Anybody, go on, can contribute. They're like tiny little rosebuds, and I was doing a collection once on Isadora Duncan, and I just loved that contrast of that purple with that white fluff. And we did, Isadora Duncan was this famous modern dancer. And she died very tragically. She liked roses thrown at her after a performance. So from this, as abstract as this looks, I made the next slide, which is by the lovely Ujjwala Raut. It was a rose that went all over to the sleeves, and then we put those small little white flowers that you saw earlier gave me the idea that I can put them onto the garment.
You have worked and dressed some really fantastic models, that they're so striking, so elegant, the bodies are so very beautiful. You must have many, many stories to tell us, but you did write a memoir, The Green Room. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I have to thank the Goa writers for that. Someone, I don't know if she's in the room here, but no, she's not, okay. Threw us a challenge that, if you write, I think it was 500 or? No.
1,000 words per day.
1,000 words per day for 2 months, you can have a book of so many pages.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to write about, so I wrote about myself and my life story. And then we decided to do instead of 2 months, I did 4 months, and I wrote The Green Room. This was from a series from my first Goan fashion show, where we used teak tree leaves spray painted in gold, and this is Malaika, and we just let these photographs lie in an archive which only Farooq Chotia and I had. And so when The Green Room was finally done, we actually could use the next image, which was in that muscle bra for the cover of the book.
You're not going to
I don't need to take any credit for how these models look, okay? But I urge you to read the book, especially fashion students, because...
Do you think everybody knows what The Green Room is?
I don't know, I hope they do. The Green Room is the room where the performers change. You could be a dancer, singer, model.
Well, they strip into their next outfit, more or less.
The most nubile, lovely, naked flesh in the country is on display. My partner sitting over here in the front, I must tell you, the first time we went to show in Paris, and I said, we were only 2 of us, and I said, you're going to hand out the girls' clothes, right? So Jerome stands there, and I said, okay, we're going to show 1 to 22, I think it was a shorter show. We normally show 1 to 40. And the choreographer said, okay girls, change time. And suddenly poor Jerome was stuck in the middle of all these naked girls saying, I'm number 20, I'm number 18. He's never entered the green room after that.
Should I go back to my question about cooking and whether that also enters in some way into your design?
I have this very strange mind, and I thank God for giving me this mind. I was watching one of my cooks, popping peas, opening this these peas, and these, like, each time it opened, there was like a miracle inside of these peas nicely nestled in. And I did, from that memory, I did what is the next slide. Can you see the neckline? It's like pin tucks And then inside the pintucks are these tees of unusual sizes. And we did this garment, I can't remember the name of the collection, but I think it was the Empress Theodora from Byzantium. And we did this effect on the edges of the cuffs, on the edges of the hems, and it sold very well. So I have to thank my kitchen skills and my catering background.
So, shall we speak a little bit about Moda Goa, this fantastic book that you wrote about the history of Goa, the history of Goan costume, and so on. But, I mean, I think I'd like to read what you wrote about the process of writing and researching this book, because I think it shows a different side of you that not too many people may think of. I mean, glamorous models, catwalks, and beautiful fabrics. But here is how he talks, Moda Goa. Okay, so that's this big book on Goan costume. And here's how he talks about researching over 10 Goan monsoons, researching for this book. And he says, I trudged up remote hills through squishy streets and damp river banks. I saw rice farmers knee-deep in brilliant green clouds, children joyfully embracing the rain, people of all ages fishing, rivers swollen with coffee-hued water, ancient monuments damp with moss, warm tavernas robustly perfumed with feining. All this with the constant accompaniment of birdsong. I mean, it's that dedication that brought out this fantastic book. But what I want to ask you is, you give credit to Mario Miranda for maybe, did he sort of push you into writing this, and would you lead us through some of the process?
I think Mario, there was a book coming out by Mario Cabral on Goa. It was a government book, and he said, he told Mario Miranda told Mario Cabral, why don't you tell Wendell to write a story or the history of the Panbaju, which is the Goan garment that we use to dance the mando. And I started off, and I really enjoyed it so much that I said, the history of Goan costume was never documented. So I made up my mind that I was going to go and intern in 2 museums, one in Lisbon, one in New York, and then in the process write about the history of my state through clothes. And it took me 10 years to research and 1 year to actually write the book. But I owe all this to Mario, because had he not sent me on that path, I wouldn't have gone there. I think we have to jump a couple of slides because I think we missed a page, but it's fine. You can look at it and just go through. Next one. These are photographs that where I say I take from my religion and translate them from the Pieta to the altar of the Bon Jésus that was put on Manasa Place. So this magazine is actually lying in a very tattered state, unfortunately, at the moment. At the time I photographed it, it was in a good condition at the Xavier Center of Historical Research, and I spent a lot of my time there to actually research the next slide, which is Moda Goa. And this photograph also is unfortunately in a very bad condition. It's lying somewhere in a bucket in the archive of the Goa State Museum. I don't even know if it exists, but the fact of the matter is that the photograph existed, and thanks to fashion and thanks to the fact that I have photographer friends who can digitally manipulate any image. They can make me look slimmer, taller, more handsome, erase everything they want, and that's what we did with this photograph. I mean, this is a lady posturing as a Devdasi, as a Goan Devdasi, in this typical kind of kundi sari, the very rich anklets and all that wonderful jewelry, a lot of which the book has, and which I had to sit with not only jewelers, because jewelers were the first Goans to leave and lead Indian shows. The first ever Indians to go westward were our Daivaidana Brahmin jewelers, because their work was so cherished. And they went and did jewelry for the entire court. So all that lovely jewelry that you see is in the book, and it was documented by me sitting with many, many jewelers all over Goa and the Konkan coast.
But apart from the more formal dress, I think you drew inspiration from other sections of the population.
I want to show you this next slide. Okay, she became my friend. This is a broom seller in the Mapsa market. And every time I met her, she would smile this big smile, knowing I was not going to buy another broom for the next 8 months. But she would engage with me in conversation, and I found such a wonderful inspiration that I actually made a garment using that sari drape, because she draped it very different. It was half Goan, half Gujarati, pallu coming down, and always that smile. So I put it on Carol Gracious, next slide, and actually translated. So much for Mapsa Market. And then in the next, while I was doing Moda Goa, we also, next slide please, I met this very handsome man who was the son of the Dangar tribe. And the memory just stayed with me because he had this really great look that could have gone into an ad. So we used that instead of the blanket that he has on his shoulder. We actually used that on the very hot Bhutan Patel. Next slide. But it's all inspirational, what I call copy.
What is the fabric of this particular one?
This fabric is actually a malka cotton, which is not baled. We get it from Hyderabad. I don't know if anyone is here from Hyderabad, but we have this lady who actually works with the tribals, and they pick the cotton while it's fresh from the field. It doesn't go through a process of baling. So, baling is when you compress it and wrap it and then send it off for carding and spinning. They eliminate that process, as a result of which the cotton gets a very light bounce and feel. And still, when you wear it today, it's available at my shop. I'm not plugging my shop, but you can go and feel it.
Recently, you've been very much in the papers for the revival of the Kumbhisari of Goa. What made you go that way? And because I guess it was it wasn't being made anymore. But what made you pick that as almost one of your signature garments now?
Next slide. This Kundi sari had a very sad history. Not only was it discarded for weaving, it was discarded by the Goan people themselves. The Brahminical system of Hinduism pushed the tribes to the lowest level. And unfortunately, people didn't want to wear the sari because it spoke of a certain strata of society. And I felt very ashamed as a Goan that every state had its sari, whether Gujarat had Bandhani, and Punjab has its own sari, and everybody has their own sari. Goa had nothing except the sari, which was now abandoned. So we decided to revive it, and we revived it using eco-friendly fabric dyes. And at that time, it was done. I think on the next slide, we modeled it on the lovely Lisa Ray, who at that time was. I'm sorry, I think we skipped.
No, there isn't one.
Oh, there. Okay. So Lisa's wearing the sari as we wove it in a very new interpretation, using the checks but in a different way, using the lines, using the ikat lines in a different way. At this time, she sadly was under treatment for cancer, and we shot this, and then by the time we actually had the show, she was yesterday at Archana Park. She actually did the stem cell thing, so it was a kind of a revival for me on a level of clothing. But it was also a revival for her in terms of getting her health back and going into remission because of what she suffered.
Now, you've been publishing a lot. Many books that have come out have had major contributions by you. One of the most recent was Sacred Textiles of India, where you took, I guess, the church textiles and wrote about them.
Actually, I did not write only about church textiles because Jaslene, the media who gave me the books in the end to write, told me write about everything. Before I go to that, I think for the slide that you're talking about, next slide, do you know these are little offerings that are given to Shanta Durga? I'm quite sure some of you may know or not know. Shanta Durga appears in dreams and she asks for saris. And Goan ladies don't take it lightly and they give her saris. And this is one of the offerings that they do. And I saw this lovely set of offerings and I made a sari. Next slide, please. Indrani Das Gupta. I think each time I would use my Goan heritage and push it forward to another dimension which nobody could imagine.
You talk about Susaga. You talk about the sea breeze of Goa. Of course, the ripples that you have so effectively translated. How do you translate that into something that goes international?
Well,
Is a universal appeal there somehow?
Apart from Gedo, I'm going to go to the next slide. This is what I had. I mean, this is all that I had. That blue color, that white, those white seagulls and the beach. And every time something happened, I would try to translate that into an international setting. It was well accepted. L'Oreal came to India, hoping to sell hair color. And I said, are you stupid? Which Indian woman is going to color her hair and make it